The keys weren't on the kitchen counter where I always left them. I stood there, staring at the empty spot, my hospital bag still in my hand from my 6-week postpartum checkup. My daughter Sophia was sleeping peacefully in her carrier beside me. I checked my purse, the drawer, even the couch cushions. Nothing. Then I noticed my wallet sitting open on the dining table, my ATM card missing from its usual slot. I called my husband's number. It rang 4 times before he picked up. "Where's my car?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Oh, Mom needed it for a few days," he said casually, like he was discussing the weather. "Her car's in the shop. I gave her your spare key yesterday. And my ATM card. She needed some cash. Don't worry about it." My grip tightened on the phone. "You gave her my card without asking me." "Wilma, she's my mother. Stop being dramatic." The line went dead. I stood there in our kitchen, holding a silent phone, feeling something shift inside me. But I didn't cry. I didn't shout. Instead, I smiled slightly and made a different call. "Dad," I said when he answered, "I need your help with something." My name is Wilma Crawford, and until that moment, I had spent 3 years being the perfect daughter-in-law. I was 31 years old, a pediatric nurse at County General Hospital, and I had just given birth to my first child 6 weeks earlier. My husband, Kenneth, worked as a sales manager at an electronics company. We'd met during a charity fundraiser where I'd been volunteering. He'd seemed charming and considerate back then. The car Kenneth had given away was mine. I'd bought it 2 years ago with my own savings, a silver Honda Accord that I drove to work every day. The title was in my name only. The ATM card he'd handed to his mother, Brenda, belonged to my personal checking account. The account I'd maintained separately, the one with my nursing salary deposits. What Kenneth didn't know was that I'd been documenting everything for the past 6 months. Every dismissive comment. Every time he prioritized his mother over our family. Every dollar of mine he'd spent without asking. It had started small. 6 months into our marriage, Brenda began dropping by unannounced. She'd criticize my cooking, rearrange my kitchen cabinets, and complain that her son looked tired because I wasn't taking proper care of him. Kenneth never defended me. Instead, he'd say, "That's just how Mom is. You're too sensitive." Then came the money requests. Brenda needed help with her electric bill. Her mortgage payment was late. Her car needed repairs. Kenneth would hand over hundreds of dollars from our joint account without discussion. When I objected, he accused me of being selfish and ungrateful. After Sophia was born, things got worse. Brenda insisted on being in the delivery room despite my protests. She criticized my decision to breastfeed, saying formula was better. She told Kenneth I was gaining too much weight and wasn't trying hard enough to lose the baby weight. 2 weeks ago, I'd overheard her telling Kenneth that he should have married someone younger and prettier. Someone who would give him a son instead of a daughter. Kenneth had laughed. My father, Vincent Hayes, arrived at my house within 20 minutes of my call. He was a retired corporate lawyer who now ran his own consulting firm. At 63, he still had the sharp mind that had made him one of the most respected attorneys in the state. He taught me everything about protecting myself legally and financially. He walked in carrying his leather briefcase, took one look at my face, and knew something serious had happened. "Tell me everything," he said, settling onto the couch while I fed Sophia. I explained about the car and the ATM card. His expression darkened with each detail. "Do you have documentation?" he asked. I handed him a folder I'd been keeping in my home office. Inside were bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals Kenneth had made from our joint account to give to Brenda. Screenshots of text messages where he'd promised his mother money without consulting me. Photos of the car title proving sole ownership. Dad flipped through the pages, his lawyer instincts fully engaged. "This is good," he said. "Very good. Now let's talk about what happens next." Dad pulled out his phone and made a call. "Stuart, it's Vincent. I need you to do something for me immediately." Stuart was his longtime investigator, someone he'd worked with for 30 years. He gave Stuart my car's license, plate number, and ATM card details. "I need to know exactly where that car is right now, and every transaction made on that card in the last 24 hours. While we waited, Dad asked more questions. Had Kenneth's name ever been added to my car registration? No. Did he have legal access to my personal checking account? No. Had I given verbal permission for any of this? Absolutely not. What you're describing is theft, Dad said calmly. Your husband stole your property and gave your financial access to another person without consent. The fact that he's your husband doesn't change the legal reality. 20 minutes later, Stuart called back. My car was parked at a casino 40 miles away. My ATM card had been used 6 times in the past day, withdrawing the daily maximum of $600 each time. The total was $3,600. My hands shook as I processed this information. I had exactly $4,000 in that account. Money I'd saved from years of working double shifts and overtime. She's gambling with your money, Dad said, his voice tight with controlled anger. At a casino while you're home alone with a 6-week-old baby. He made another call, this time to his friend at the police department. I need to report a stolen vehicle and credit card fraud. He provided all the details, emphasizing that the car's registered owner had not given permission for its use. Then he called his attorney friend, Maxwell, who specialized in family law. I need you to draft emergency documents, theft of property, unauthorized financial access, and we'll need a restraining order. He paused. Yes, against both the husband and the mother-in-law. I sat there, listening to my father systematically build a legal case while Sophia slept in my arms. This was really happening. My marriage was falling apart, but for the first time in months, I felt like I had some control. Now, Dad said, ending his calls, we wait for Kenneth to come home. Don't tell him anything. Don't argue. Just listen to what he says and let him dig his own hole deeper. Kenneth walked through the door at 7 that evening, whistling cheerfully. He stopped when he saw my father sitting in the living room. Vincent, he said, his smile faltering slightly, I didn't know you were coming by. Wilma called me, Dad replied evenly. She had some concerns about her missing car and ATM card. Kenneth's face flushed. That's between me and my wife. Actually, it's between Wilma and the law, Dad corrected. Since you took property that doesn't belong to you and gave financial access to someone without authorization. She's my mother. She needed help. Then you should have used your own money, I said quietly, not mine. Kenneth turned to me, his expression shifting to the condescending tone he'd been using more frequently. This is why I didn't ask you. I knew you'd be selfish about it. Mom needed the car for important errands, and she needed some cash for expenses. Important errands at a casino, Dad interjected. Kenneth went pale. What? Your mother has been gambling with Wilma's money all day, Dad continued. She's withdrawn $3,600 and is currently parked at Desert Sky Casino. The silence in the room was deafening. Kenneth's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Finally, he managed, You're tracking her. I'm tracking my daughter's stolen car, Dad replied, which contains her stolen ATM card being used without permission. Kenneth's shock quickly turned to anger. You had no right to involve your father in this, Wilma. This is our marriage, our business. You made it my business when you stole from me, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. The car title is in my name only. The bank account is mine alone. You had no legal right to give either to your mother. Legal right, Kenneth laughed bitterly. We're married, what's yours is mine. Dad stood up, his full 6'2" frame suddenly intimidating. That's not how the law works, son, especially not in this state. Property owned before marriage or purchased individually remains separate, and what you've done constitutes theft and fraud. Kenneth looked at me desperately. Wilma, please, you're overreacting. Mom will bring everything back tomorrow. Will she bring back the $3,600 she gambled away? I asked. Kenneth pulled out his phone and called his mother. The conversation was brief and tense. I watched his face cycle through disbelief, anger, and panic. When he hung up, he looked 10 years older. She says the money's not gone, he said weakly. She was just borrowing it. Borrowing requires asking permission, Dad pointed out. This was theft. The police report has already been filed. Police report, Kenneth's voice cracked. You called the cops on my mother. On both of you, Dad corrected. You're the one who actually took the car and card. Your mother's just the one who used them. Kenneth collapsed onto the chair, head in his hands. This is insane. You're destroying our family over a car and some money. No, I said firmly. You destroyed our family when you decided your mother was more important than your wife and daughter. When you took what wasn't yours without even asking. When you called me selfish for wanting to protect what I worked for. Sophia started crying from her bassinet. I picked her up, feeling her tiny body against mine. This was what mattered, protecting her, protecting myself, not enabling Kenneth's disrespect any longer. The next morning, 2 police officers arrived at our door. They were polite but professional as they asked Kenneth to explain why he'd taken my car and given my ATM card to his mother without my permission. Kenneth tried explaining that he was my husband, that married people shared things, that this was all a misunderstanding. The officers exchanged glances. The older one, Officer Reynolds, had clearly seen this before. Sir, the vehicle registration shows your wife as the sole owner. The bank account is in her name only. Without her explicit permission, taking these items constitutes theft, regardless of your marital status. Brenda showed up an hour later, screeching into our driveway in my car. She stormed into the house without knocking, my ATM card clutched in her hand. How dare you call the police on me, she screamed. I'm Kenneth's mother. I have every right to help from my own son. You have no right to my property or my money, I replied calmly, with Sophia in my arms. Kenneth had no right to give them to you. Brenda turned to the officers. This girl has been disrespectful to me since the day Kenneth married her. She's trying to turn my son against me. Officer Reynolds remained professional. Ma'am, do you have permission from the vehicle's owner to drive it? I don't need permission. Kenneth gave it to me. Kenneth isn't the owner, the officer explained patiently. Mrs. Crawford is. Without her authorization, you've been driving a stolen vehicle. Brenda's face turned purple. Stolen, this is family, we help each other. Then you should have asked, I said quietly. You should have asked if you could borrow my car. You should have asked if you could use my money. Instead, you and Kenneth took what you wanted and expected me to just accept it. The younger officer, Officer Kim, was documenting everything in her notepad. Ma'am, we'll also need to discuss the $3,600 withdrawn from Mrs. Crawford's account. I was going to pay it back, Brenda protested. With what money? Dad asked. You haven't worked in 15 years. You depend entirely on Kenneth's financial support, which actually comes partially from my daughter's income. The truth was harsh and clear. Brenda had been living beyond her means for years, and Kenneth had been enabling her by raiding our joint finances and now my personal savings. Officer Reynolds handed Kenneth a citation. You'll need to appear in court next month to answer charges of theft and unauthorized use of financial instruments. Mrs. Crawford will need to decide whether she wants to press full charges or resolve this civilly. After the officers left with statements from everyone, the house fell silent. Brenda sat on the couch, looking stunned. Kenneth paced the kitchen. I fed Sophia, feeling strangely calm despite the chaos. I can't believe you do this to us, Kenneth finally said. Press charges against your own husband. I haven't decided yet, I replied honestly. But I want you both to understand something. What you did wasn't a small mistake. It was a betrayal. You took from me without asking, gave my things to someone else, and expected me to just accept it because family helps family. We do help family, Brenda interjected weakly. Help requires consent, Dad said firmly. This was taking, there's a difference. Kenneth looked at his mother, then at me. What do you want, Wilma? What will make this right? I'd been thinking about this all night. I want my money back, all of it. I want a written agreement that neither of you will take anything of mine without explicit permission again, and I want couples counseling. Kenneth agreed immediately, desperate to avoid criminal charges. Brenda was less cooperative, insisting she'd done nothing wrong, but Dad made it clear that without repayment. He'd personally ensure the district attorney pursued maximum penalties. Over the next week, Brenda sold some jewelry, and Kenneth took a loan from his retirement account to repay the $3,600. The money was deposited back into my account with both of them present at the bank, making it official. Dad had drawn up a legal agreement, one that Kenneth and Brenda both signed in front of a notary. It stated clearly that all property in my name was off-limits without written permission. Any violation would result in immediate legal action without warning. Kenneth also agreed to attend counseling. Our first session was scheduled for the following Thursday. I had hoped that maybe we could fix this, that maybe this had been the wake-up call he needed to see how his mother's manipulation had damaged our marriage. I was wrong about that hope, very wrong. During our third counseling session, Kenneth admitted something that changed everything. "I don't think I should have to ask permission to help my mother," Kenneth said to our counselor, Dr. Patricia Hammond. "She raised me, she sacrificed for me. If she needs something, I should be able to provide it." Dr. Hammond leaned forward. "Even if providing it means taking from your wife without consent." "Wilma has plenty," Kenneth said dismissively. "She makes good money as a nurse. She can afford to share." "That's not the point," I interjected. "The point is respect. You didn't even ask me. You just took." "Because I knew you'd say no," Kenneth's voice rose. "You're always so tight with money when it comes to my mother, but you'll spend hundreds on baby things without blinking." "Sophia is our daughter," I said slowly, trying to control my anger. "Of course I spend money on her needs. Your mother is a grown woman who should manage her own finances." Kenneth stood up abruptly. "I can't do this. I can't be married to someone who hates my mother and refuses to help her." The words hung in the air. Dr. Hammond watched us both carefully. "Is that really what you think?" I asked quietly. "That I hate your mother?" "You've made it clear you don't want her in our lives," Kenneth said, still standing. "Ever since Sophia was born, you've been pushing her away. She can't visit without you getting upset. She can't offer advice without you taking it as criticism." I thought about Brenda telling Kenneth I was too fat after giving birth. Her insistence that I was a bad mother for breastfeeding. Her constant undermining of every decision I made. "Your mother told you I wasn't pretty enough anymore," I said calmly. "She said you should have married someone who'd give you a son. She criticized my parenting, my cooking, my housekeeping. And you laughed. You agreed with her." Kenneth's face flushed. "She was joking." "Was she joking when she gambled away my money at a casino?" I asked. "Was she joking when she took my car without asking? When does the joking stop and the disrespect begin?" Dr. Hammond intervened gently. "Kenneth, I'm hearing that you feel caught between loyalty to your mother and your marriage. Is that accurate?" "Yes," he admitted. "I don't know how to make both of them happy." "You shouldn't have to choose," the counselor replied. "But you do need healthy boundaries." We left that session with homework assignments. Kenneth was supposed to practice setting boundaries with his mother. I was supposed to work on communicating my needs more clearly. We were both supposed to spend dedicated time together, rebuilding intimacy and trust. Kenneth completed none of his assignments. Instead, over the next 2 weeks, I noticed him becoming distant. He started coming home later from work. He stopped helping with Sophia's nighttime feedings. When I asked him about the boundary setting with his mother, he changed the subject. Then I found the text messages. Kenneth had left his phone on the bathroom counter while he showered. A notification popped up from Brenda. "Have you asked her about the loan yet? I need it by Friday." I opened his messages. What I found was months of communication I'd never known about. Brenda asking for money constantly. Kenneth promising to handle me. Her telling him I was controlling and manipulative. Him agreeing that I'd changed since having the baby, that I wasn't the woman he'd married. The most recent messages were from earlier that day. Brenda had asked for $5,000 for medical expenses. Kenneth had promised to get it, saying he'd take it from our joint savings. I screenshot every message and sent them to my personal email. Then I called my father. He's planning to take $5,000 from our joint savings, I told Dad, for his mother's supposed medical expenses. Medical expenses that she's never mentioned to you, Dad asked knowingly. Exactly. Dad, I think this is never going to stop. The counseling isn't working. He's not changing. He's just getting better at hiding it. There was a long pause. What do you want to do, sweetheart? I looked at Sophia sleeping in her crib, so peaceful and innocent. I thought about the kind of marriage I was modeling for her. A marriage where her mother accepted disrespect and theft, where boundaries didn't matter, where grandmothers manipulated and fathers enabled. I want a divorce, I said, and I want to make sure he can't take anything else from me in the process. Dad's voice was sad but supportive. I'll call Maxwell first thing tomorrow morning. We'll make sure you and Sophia are protected. That night, I transferred most of the joint savings to my personal account. It was money I'd contributed from my paychecks anyway, money I could prove was mine. The next morning, Kenneth discovered the transferred funds. He came storming out of his home office, laptop in hand, face red with fury. You took our savings, he shouted. You emptied the account. I moved my contributions to my personal account, I corrected calmly, feeding Sophia her bottle. The money I earned and deposited, I left your contributions exactly where they were. That's our emergency fund. You had no right. Like you had no right to plan taking $5,000 without telling me. I set down the bottle and pulled out my phone, showing him the screenshots. For your mother's medical expenses that she's never mentioned to me once. Kenneth's anger faltered. You went through my phone. You left it unlocked. The notification appeared. I read what followed. I kept my voice level. Kenneth, I'm tired. I'm tired of fighting for basic respect. I'm tired of being the enemy in my own marriage because I won't let your mother walk all over me. So what are you saying? His voice was cold now. I'm saying I want a divorce. My attorney will be serving you papers this afternoon. The color drained from his face. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. Maxwell arrived at 3 o'clock with the divorce papers. Kenneth tried to refuse them. But Maxwell calmly explained that his refusal didn't stop the legal process. The papers were served, documented, and official. Kenneth called his mother immediately. Within an hour, Brenda was at our door, screaming about what an ungrateful, selfish woman I was, how I was destroying her son's life, how I was keeping her granddaughter from her. You never cared about being a grandmother, I replied tiredly. You complained when I was pregnant. You criticized everything about Sophia after she was born. You told Kenneth you wished we'd had a son instead. I never said that. You did 3 weeks ago. Kenneth told me about it after you left. I stood firm in my doorway, not letting her enter. You've never respected me, Brenda. You've never respected my marriage. You only cared about what Kenneth could give you financially. That's not true. The bank records say otherwise. Over the past 3 years, Kenneth has given you over $40,000, money that should have gone to our savings, our home, our daughter's future. Dad had helped me compile those records. The evidence was staggering. Kenneth had been systematically funneling money to his mother while I thought we were building a future together. The divorce process was ugly. Kenneth fought me on everything, especially custody. He claimed I was an unfit mother, that I was mentally unstable, that I'd manipulated him throughout our marriage. But Maxwell was thorough and brilliant. He presented the bank records showing Kenneth's financial deception. The text messages proving his mother's manipulation. The police report from the car theft. The counseling notes where Kenneth admitted he prioritized his mother over our marriage. Most damaging was Brenda herself. During her deposition, she couldn't help but reveal her true character. She called me names, insisted Kenneth should have full custody, and admitted she'd been advising him to hide money from me for months. So you encouraged your son to commit financial fraud against his wife? Maxwell asked calmly. I encouraged him to protect himself from a gold digger, Brenda snapped. A gold digger who makes more money than he does, who bought her own car, who kept her own savings separate. That's an interesting definition. The mediator had seen enough. Kenneth's credibility was destroyed. 3 months after I filed, we reached a settlement. I got primary custody of Sophia with Kenneth having supervised visitation until he could demonstrate stable housing independent from his mother. I also got the house. Kenneth had argued he deserved it, but Maxwell proved that I'd made the down payment from my pre-marriage savings and paid 70% of the mortgage. The house was mine. Kenneth was ordered to pay child support based on his actual income, not the reduced amount he'd tried to claim. The judge wasn't impressed when Maxwell showed evidence of Kenneth's unreported side income that he'd been funneling to Brenda. Most satisfying was the judge's ruling on Brenda's involvement. She was prohibited from being present during Kenneth's visitation with Sophia until she completed a co-parenting boundaries course. The judge specifically cited her manipulative behavior and interference in the marriage. "Ma'am," Judge Anderson had said sternly, "your son is an adult. His marriage was not your business to manage. Your financial demands contributed directly to this divorce. I strongly suggest you reflect on your role in destroying your son's family." Brenda had left the courtroom in tears. Kenneth had looked shattered. I'd felt nothing but relief. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I sold the house. Too many bad memories. I bought a smaller place closer to my parents, where Sophia and I could start fresh. The new house was perfect. 3 bedrooms, a big backyard, a neighborhood full of young families. Dad helped me move in, setting up Sophia's nursery while I unpacked boxes. "You did the right thing," he told me as we assembled her crib. "I know it was hard, but you protected yourself and your daughter." "I just wish I'd seen it sooner," I admitted. The signs were all there. The way he prioritized his mother, the way he dismissed my feelings. I ignored it because I wanted the marriage to work. "That's not weakness, sweetheart, that's hope. You gave him every chance to change. He chose not to." My phone buzzed. It was a text from Kenneth. "Mom's in the hospital. Heart attack, thought you should know." I stared at the message. A year ago, I would have rushed to the hospital, would have supported Kenneth through this crisis, would have set aside our problems to be there for him. Now, I simply replied, "I hope she recovers. Let me know if you need to adjust the visitation schedule." I wasn't heartless. I just wasn't responsible for his mother's health or his emotional support anymore. That chapter had closed. A year after the divorce, I was thriving. I'd gotten a promotion at the hospital, leading the pediatric nursing team. Sophia was walking and babbling, spending weekends with my parents while I worked extra shifts. The child support Kenneth paid covered her needs, and my income covered everything else comfortably. Kenneth had moved in with his mother to help her after her heart attack. His career had stalled when his company discovered his financial irregularities. The side income he'd been hiding from me had also been hidden from the IRS, resulting in penalties and audits. Brenda's medical crisis had been real, but it had also revealed how deep her financial problems went. She'd been in serious debt, living beyond her means, dependent entirely on Kenneth's support. Now they were both struggling, living in her small 2-bedroom apartment. Kenneth's supervised visitations with Sophia had expanded to unsupervised after he completed the court-ordered parenting classes, but he rarely exercised his full custody time. Taking care of a toddler was expensive and time-consuming, and he was too busy managing his mother's care and his own financial problems. I felt no satisfaction in his struggles, only relief that Sophia and I were no longer caught in that dysfunction. One afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Kenneth standing there, looking humble and tired. "Can we talk?" he asked. I hesitated, then nodded. "Sophia's napping. We can sit on the porch." We sat in awkward silence for a moment before Kenneth spoke. "I owe you an apology, a real one, not the half-hearted ones I gave during the divorce." I waited, saying nothing. "You were right about everything," he continued. "Mom was manipulating me. I was choosing her over you and Sophia. I was stealing from you, even if I didn't call it that at the time." He looked down at his hands. "Losing you, losing our family was the wake-up call I needed, but it came too late." "Yes," I agreed. "It did." "Mom and I are in therapy now. individually and together. I'm finally setting boundaries. I told her that her financial problems aren't mine to solve anymore. It's been hard, but necessary. I'm glad you're getting help, I said sincerely. Not for me, but for Sophia. She deserves a father who's healthy and present. Kenneth nodded. I want to be better for her. Not to win you back, I know that's not happening. Just to be the dad she deserves. It was the first mature conversation we'd had in years. 2 years after the divorce, I met someone new. His name was Adrian, a physician at the hospital. He was kind, respectful, and had healthy boundaries with his own family. He treated Sophia like she was precious, and he treated me like an equal partner. When I introduced him to my father, Dad pulled me aside. "This one's different," he said approvingly. "This one sees your value." Kenneth had remarried too, surprisingly to someone who set firm boundaries with Brenda from the start. His new wife insisted on financial transparency and limited involvement from his mother. Ironically, his second marriage was healthier because he'd finally learned the lessons our divorce had taught him. Brenda had downsized to a small apartment she could afford on her Social Security. Kenneth helped occasionally, but within reasonable limits. She'd never apologized to me, but she had stopped interfering in his new marriage, perhaps having learned that her manipulation had consequences. As for me, I'd learned the most important lesson of all. Self-respect isn't selfish. Protecting yourself isn't cruel. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is refuse to enable someone else's dysfunction. Standing up to Kenneth and Brenda hadn't destroyed our family. Their disrespect had already done that. I'd simply refused to let them destroy me too. And in doing so, I'd built something better. A life where I was valued, respected, and free.